guys, this is BenCB for RaiseYourEdge.com. What am I about to teach you here in this updated course, Perfect Open Raise Strategy at 20 to 25 Big Blinds, is literally everything you need to know about how to open raise at that stack size. I decided to make a quick update since I think the game has changed in the past. Therefore, I decided to adjust the open raising ranges. Why I think it makes sense to play different ranges and how to adjust properly. We're gonna talk about that later more in detail. But first of all, I highly recommend you watching the first part, or rather the original part of the Perfect Open Raising Strategy course. So do that before. And at first I will give a quick recap about the common mistakes many students or many poker players doing when playing at 20 to 25 big blinds. And then secondly, we will talk about adaptations, or how we're gonna adapt to today's population tendencies. But last but not least, we obviously the most important point, we will construct new ranges. So yeah, the biggest leak most players do is that they are playing too static and non-elastic ranges. That means they're not adapting enough on players sitting behind, players sitting in the blind. They are not aware of in-game table selection, isolating the recreational players, playing wider ranges against the fish. So yeah, they're not really considering the different player types. They are also open raising to lose from early positions, but also open raising to tight from late positions. But this is something we're going to talk about later. Open raising to tight from late positions. That is actually the main point why I made this video, because I think we have to change our strategy, especially from later positions. Also, wrong thought patterns. They are more or less too much focused on the push or fold mode. I especially see that when guys are coming from the cash games or totally new beginners, they start with sit and goes and they set their priorities way too high for the push and fold mode, which is not too bad, but they are not really focusing on proper open raising ranges. I mean, every sit and go starts playing with 20 to 25 big blinds. Or rather the hyper turbo sit and goes. So that means we need to have solid open raising range, otherwise we will end up many mistakes, especially post flop. We will end up being in very tricky and nasty situations post flop with hands where we should never be in. So that's why, my opinion, to become a very good sit and go player, you need to have solid open raise ranges and know how to adapt. And yeah, hidden mistakes are often the most expensive, since many players underestimate the mistakes they do pre-flop and end up being in very expensive post-flop situations, and they don't realize that the beginning of the chain of mistakes started pre-flop, and they could have easily avoided by playing a different range. Alright, how do we adapt? Okay, so the thing is that in these days people are more odds aware. Let's say 1 or 2 years ago, people, they weren't so much aware of their own odds or the odds they get for defend against a 3-bet or a passive defend. That being said, that obviously open raises or steals from later positions were way more profitable. So since they defend wider, our EV of stealing lightly decreases tremendously. Or not tremendously, but definitely at least a bit. So it is not highly recommended anymore to open raise very loose from late positions, which was very profitable, let's say couple months ago or a year ago. So exploiting population tendencies is the way to go. Population tendencies basically means that we exploit the tendencies what the average player is doing on certain stakes. So let's say the average regular on $5 limits, he is not really aware of the odds he gets, hence he's defending too tight his blinds. That means we're gonna open raise fairly loose from button and cutoff. Even though we don't know who is sitting in the blinds, we perceive them as unknowns, but since we know the average player on that stake is not defending enough, we assume that the population tendencies say that the average player is not defending wide enough. That means we're gonna open raise looser. So this is just a little explanation what actually population tendencies means. So we always act on the assumptions based what the average player does on certain limits, even though we don't know him. We don't know him yet, or we don't have any reads developed so far. So this is very, very important. So let's have a closer look how our ranges should look like. Under the gun didn't change so much. It's basically the 15% range. But here as an example, if we want to adapt to the players sitting in the blind, if we see, okay, hijack, button, cutoff are not that active, tightish regulars, and in the blinds are sitting 2 spots, or there's 1 big spot sitting, obviously we want to increase our range, and that means that we add hands like King 9, Queen 9, Jack 9 suited, maybe Queen Jack, King 10 off, which are totally fine to open raise with. So instead of raising a 50% range, we raise a range of between 12 to 18%. So as you can see, we never take that 15% as carved in stone. No, we know, okay, we can raise something between 12 and 18%, or even more, even less, but it should be somewhere in that range. And then we always try to adapt as best as possible. Obviously, you don't know exactly how the players play. Often you only have a little piece of information given, but you should use them as best as possible. Don't overestimate the information you have. If you only have 5 or 10 hands, it's not really a tendency yet. How to adapt properly? If you don't have an idea or you forget how to adapt properly, I highly recommend you watching the first pre-flop course, how to open raise properly, or perfect open raise strategies at 20 to 25 big blinds. There in the second part of the video, I'm going to show you how to adapt properly. We have a lot of practical hands. So yeah, if you're struggling there, go back and watch this video. Let's go to hijack. Hijack is also doesn't change that much. Hands like 7-6 suited, ace 9 off, queen 10 off, I would forward when I would think that the players sitting on the button and on the cutoff are sticky, are aggressive, and will flat call me, 3-bet me too often that I'm not able to have a profitable open raise with ace 9 or queen 10 offsuit. Again, you can also go looser with the suited kings, suited queens, suited jacks a little bit if the lineup is pretty soft and the blinds are very fishy. Okay, let's go to the cutoff. The cutoff changes already quite a bit. As you remember, the cutoff range was somewhere around 35 or 37%. Now we are already roughly at 30%. It's still more on the looser side, but this is definitely a very rock solid range. You can go even tighter with the off-suited aces, but this should be enough. This should be totally fine, and you will literally print money with that range. Again, somewhere between 25, 35, 40%. Definitely viable range. If there are any kind of passive and tight racks sitting on the button or even in the big blind. I mean, here the most important positions are the button and the big blind. And if there are two racks who are not defending enough, you can definitely go up to the 37 or 40% range, for sure. Let's go to the button. The button, we have tremendous difference here. If you remember, button was something around 55%. It was far over 50%. Right now we have a range of roughly 42%. Since I think people are defending more, I think it's a very powerful range. Again, but if the big blind is passive, tight, weak, you can definitely open raise wider, and you should do though. Don't print those ranges out and just play like a roboter these ranges up. And no, don't do that. You will lose a lot of money. See them as an orientation, as fundamentals, but nothing more. Also, really important, if you feel that, or if not, if you feel, you should never do something because you feel something. If you have a tendency or a read or stats that your opponents in the blinds are very aggressive and you want to play tighter ranges, the first adaptations you want to make is limping. Start limping and see how they react against the limps. Because most of the time, the blinds are very aggressive against open raises, but are quite passive against limps. And also jamming for them becomes way expensive, way more expensive. So the risk reward ratio for jamming against a limb is really poor, and we risked less money to see a flop. So yeah, and then if they keep ISO raising you or jamming against your limb, then we obviously have to become tighter. But you will figure out real quick if you're playing against the same opponents again and again, which might be more important on higher stakes where the player pool becomes smaller. And if you are playing against aggressive fish, I mean, we are just playing straightforward against them anyway and very exploitable, so we shouldn't, or you shouldn't really care about that. But once you developed a strong read against a recreational player, you should definitely tag him or write a short note, because it is sometimes the case that you will see him again. And if you already have a read on him and you noted it, it will save you so much money. I promise. They won't change their style. They will stick to their style. They do what they want. They play their style. They will never adapt. And if you know how they play, you can make tremendous adjustments and literally exploit them so hard. So take advantage of that. Okay, now we're gonna talk about the most difficult part, or the most difficult range. It is the small blind range. I prepared a small blind range for you. It's a mixed strategy. Looks very colorful. You can definitely play different strategies from the small blind. On lower stakes, I would definitely play very exploitable. I would raise many strong hands. I would limp many weak hands. So my range is very unbalanced. Since I don't expect people exploiting that a lot. If so, you can make real quick adjustments. So I don't think it is necessary to have a quote-unquote balanced small blind strategy, but if you are playing higher stakes, I definitely recommend you should definitely have that in your repertoire, because there will be many good regulars that are able to defend very wide from the big blind. So you cannot open raise that way. I mean, you can definitely play an open raise strategy, but this is definitely not the max EV strategy, since you have to open raise tighter. You cannot open raise 80 or 70%, because then your opponent can literally rejam any two cards, or you have to call it off with very loose. So you end up playing high variance spots, and the opponent in the big blind can literally can make your life a living hell. So be aware of that. It is very, very easy assailable, so keep that in mind. Okay, so the small blind mixed strategy. Let's start with the first line here, the raise call range. Those are the pink hands, or is it violet? Yeah, whatever. Um, you might be surprised that I have ace 9 off, king jack suited in the range here. There are definitely a lot of opponents who are rejamming any ace with 25 big blinds, or around 20 to 25 big blinds. Blind versus blind. So often ace 9 off. It depends a little bit. If we have 20 big blinds, ace 9 off is more or less a call than, for example, with 25 big blinds. The same for king jack suited. With 25 big blinds, I would definitely raise forward ace 9 or king jack suited. So keep that in mind, that there are also differences between 20 and 25 big blinds. There are a couple of hands that are not the exact thresholds. So the ranges are more or less a floating. The second line is the open raise forward versus rejam. So as you can see, we are raise calling 8% of hands against rejam, and versus raise call against rejam, and we are folding 5% of the range. So as you can see, our open raising range is already quite strong. Keep that in mind. This is already a little exploit I included into my mixed strategy here, that I think also on higher stakes that people are not so aggressive against limbs yet. That's why that's why my open raising range is stronger, because obviously I wanna get max value out of them. And as you can see, you will see that later, that my limping range is quite weak. But we will talk about that later. So the third row is the limp call versus a 3x ISO raise. Those are the yellow hands. Pretty standard, very good board coverage. We have some aces, we have some broadways, we have some suited connectors. I think this is very, very good. Limp 3-bet, obviously the light blue hands, aces, ace king suited, and as you can see, it's very suited heavy. I like having the suited hands in my limping range and the off suited hands in my raising range, since they need a little bit more protection. And also it's easier for me to keep in mind which hands I limp, which hands I min raise, or not min raise, but open raise. You never want to min raise from the small blind, by the way. You always want to at least raise somewhere around 2.3x. Better would be 2.5x. Otherwise, your opponent can defend 100%, and he's not even doing a mistake. He is forced to call 100%. So really, really important that you have a proper open raise sizing there. So our limp 3-bet, obviously ace king, ace queen suited. Limp 3-bet bluff. We have the dark green heavy hands. Dark green. So hands like 10-6 suited, 9-5 suited, ace deuce off. It's quite bluff heavy. I think that is because I still believe that people are not raising that much. But when they raise, their range is still quite weak. They're raising very polarized. So, I mean, they're not raising hands like Queen Jack or Jack 10 suited. They rather check them back because they are afraid of getting limp jam, and then they have to fold the hand. So they include not many broadways. So they have the strongest aces, and they're checking back hands like ace 8 off, ace 7 off, even many suited aces. And then they are raising maybe king queen suited, king jack suited, king queen off, eights and better, and jamming sevens to deuces. So the point is that those are not many hands. And if you think about a 30% ISO raising range, this, which is pretty much the average on mid stakes and high stakes, as 30% ISO raise, big blind versus small blind. There have to be a lot of shit hands in their range. So the range is very polarized. As I said, very strong hands, very weak hands. So hands like 9-6 off, 8-6 off, 6-5 off, 7-4 suited, 7-5 suited. So hands like those. And that's why I also made a little adjustment here, that my range is a little bit more bluff heavier. My limp 3-bet range, also very important. If you get ISO raised and you want a limp 3-bet as a bluff, you don't need to size it very big. Against polarized ranges, no matter if your opponent is 3-betting polarized or ISO raising polarized, it is totally fine to work with small sizings. So if he's ISO raising, let's say first blind stage 10-20, and he's ISO raising to 60, 130 is totally fine. They're gonna fold their crap hands anyway. They're not peeling 9-6 off or shit hands like this. To make sure that they really fold those hands, okay, put 10 chips on the top and make it 140. But there's no need to go for the 3x or 2.5x like 150 or 160. No, forget about that. It's totally fine to make it small. And if you faced an opponent who was raising quote unquote a more merged range, so hands like King Jack, Queen 10 off, or Jack 10 suited, you write a note and make an adjustment next time. An adjustment would be obviously not 3-betting, or not 3-betting as a bluff so light. And then the dark violet hands, the limp forward versus 3x, pretty much the biggest part in our range, with 40% here, which is still totally fine. It can be a little bit lower, but I think even 40% is super okay. And limp jam deuces to fives. You can open jam them. They will definitely show a slight profit. Open jamming with 20 bigs for sure, 25 big blinds. I don't really like open jamming with more than 20 big blinds. I rather limp them, keep the pot small, because they play horrible in a single raise pot out of position, especially as a short stack. I mean, with 100 big blinds or 50 big blinds, it's a little bit different. But 20, 25 big blinds playing small pocket pairs out of position is very, very bad. So I want to rather keep the pot small, limp them, and then have them in my limp jamming range as well. We don't really have limp jams as a bluff. I mean, we don't need to. You can limp jam hands like ace 10 suited or ace jack suited as well, and then put ace jack off in your limp 3-bet range, or you can mix it up how you want. I don't think it has to be super balanced anyway, since most players on sit and goes are not playing balanced at all. So please don't make a GTO small blind versus big blind range. There's no need to. They're playing so different styles. Some are ISO raising very tight, some are ISO raising very loose, some are defending super tight, some are defending super loose. Again, if you're playing against a guy who's not defending his big blind enough, you want to play open raise only strategy anyway. There's no sense in limping a hand like 8-4 suited if the guy is folding more than 50% of his big blind. We have a profitable open raise with any two cards. So always adapt on your opponent in the big blind. This is super key. So yeah, and since we are limping many hands, we are allowed to play roughly 70% from the small blind here, which is totally fine. You definitely want to play as many hands as possible from the small blind, since you get a good price. And if your opponent is quite sticky, okay, then start limping. Alright. If you have any questions, feedback, whatsoever, you can ask in the forum, in my blog. You can get in touch with me via email, bencb@raiseyouredge.com. I will respond as fast as possible. And yeah, and I'm looking forward to produce a new video for you. And then there will also be a second part for the 12 to 20 big blind course. So watch that as well, because there we're also obviously gonna open jam more hands, and we're gonna face more rejams, so there we need to make adjustments as well. Alright guys, that's it for today. That was BenCB for RaiseYedge.com. Bye bye.